Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. We're back on the dev server having a look at some new vehicles coming in the next major update, and one of them is a little bit weird. It's the Object 211 for China. Now this one isn't specifically weird because of the vehicle. It's actually very similar to a few of the other ones we already have. You know, stuff like the Type 63, and then of course the ZTS 63, which is later on. But the weird oddity about it is that it's replacing the PT-76 for the Chinese tech tree. So they're going to remove the PT-76 and replace it with the 211. In the changelog, they have put the tank will be removed in 2 weeks from the major update release from the Chinese ground vehicles tree and will not be available for research. The tank will remain with the players who researched or purchased the unit. So, if you want to keep the PT-76, you now have to research it and get it before the update, or at least the way that it's worded, basically 2 weeks after the update comes out. So you have 2 weeks in that period to get it, and obviously this time now. So make sure to get it. Is probably the way of saying it, because it's always nice to have these machines, especially to kind of fill out lineups. But the thing is, I have no idea why they're removing it, and I'd like some clarification why they are removing it. But let's get into the Object 211. So what is this vehicle? It seems to basically just be a prototype of the Type 60, or, you know, the one which we already have, the Type 63, I should say, not the Type 60, where it's this weird amphibious box with not a ton of armor, but access to the 85mm Type 62 85 TC. It takes away a lot of the niceties of the later versions of this, so it doesn't have any heat FS, for example, so you are just reliant on the BR367, which isn't great. You know, it's got a good penning round in general, but at the same time, losing that heat means that you lose that penetration power, which can be super useful. Doesn't have a top-mounted gun, so it loses that as well. Doesn't have access to a stabilizer for the gunner, and also just doesn't really have anything else. So it's just kind of an odd vehicle. I don't know why they've decided to replace the PT-76 with it. Maybe just to make it a bit more unique, or do something else with the PT-76, since of course Finland just got a version recently. So this vehicle has a 3-man crew. It's got the driver, gunner, and loader. So no commander on this vehicle, and also it has the 85mm we talked about. Has pretty bad targeting speed, really bad vertical speed, and generally pretty bad horizontal as well. It's also got the coaxial machine gun, the 7.62 to mark targets, which is quite nice. And then of course the first stage ammo storage of only 6 pieces. So you have a really rough reload for the 85mm, but also on top of that, once you run out of those 6 pieces, it's going to get even worse. So pretty rough. It does have a 400 horsepower engine for this vehicle that's nearly 20 tons somehow. I don't know how this thing's so heavy. And then also it has a transmission, which is pretty decent. You know, the mobility of this vehicle is pretty good. The major issues are all the other factors. You know, the gun depression is weak. It is quite high off the ground. Its armor consists of 15mm on the front because it's designed more to be amphibious, and obviously that doesn't really help. It does actually have a fully variable thick turret, but, I mean, it's still 20mm, so it's not like something that, you know, is really going to stop anything. It's got 10mm of armor on the side and 8mm on the back. While playing some of the other versions of this machine, what has actually happened to me has been the simple fact that an ally has been shot next to me, and then the extra kind of shrapnel that's come off that round has hit the 211 or hit, you know, the Type 63 and overpressured me. So definitely annoying, and I feel like this is going to happen with this machine as well. So definitely a bit of a problem. I really detest these machines from China. Most of the tech tree is really fun and really enjoyable. This type of machine just is not one of them. one of the saving graces is it does get access to scouting, which is quite nice, and it also gets access to artillery, so at least you have those to try and help you out. And you do get the stock round, the BR365A, which does have some HE filler, so if you do penetrate targets, you will do a lot of damage to them. And then the 6.7, of course, giving you a little bit more damage in the form of penetration. And then also, I believe, a little bit more HE filler. Actually, no, it's way less HE filler than the standard round. So I still think the penetration is worth getting, so the 367 is the better round. It doesn't have NVDs or anything like that. It does have some ESS. It doesn't have any smoke grenades, which are another thing that's super useful for a vehicle like this, but I'm guessing we just don't have them either because it's a prototype. So this thing is really bare bones in its general mechanics and what it has access to, and that can hurt the vehicle quite a lot. You know, it's something which pretty much means that it is kind of going to struggle because of these things. Now, you can see how slow the turret is, so you're going to have to turn the whole vehicle to turn it, and even then, you know, it's going to take a while to do it. One of the nice things about it, you can see the optics are actually quite nice on it, so if you are looking at a target, or if you want to scout it from miles away, you can do that pretty well. And also, it's a little bit flat on the hull, so at least it's a little bit lower profile than it could have been, which, you know, is a little bit of a saving grace, but nothing too crazy. The forward acceleration is generally not too bad. You know, you are actually able to move around a decent amount. And one of the interesting things, as you may have seen on the bottom left, is it said, oh, it's stabilized. Look, it's got a stabilizer. But if you have a look at this gun and how wobbly it is, you'll be like, oh, well, it must be a really bad stabilizer because, you know, it doesn't seem to affect it even at 30 kilometers an hour. Well, the gun doesn't have a stabilizer. What has a stabilizer is the commander sight. Now, it's interesting that this thing has a commander sight because it doesn't actually have a commander. So basically, it's one of those kind of odd things which isn't very useful because of the simple fact that it doesn't have any way of using it, and you can't fire while going through it either. So don't be fooled by that stabilizer thing there. It's just for the commander itself. So the vehicle, for me, is going to be a pain to play. These types of vehicles are always rough to kind of grind through because you never feel like you can take fights on an equal footing because the enemies that you generally face have a lot of those secondary factors which are a lot better than, you know, you are. The vehicle does have scouting, so if you're at a disadvantage, you can at least try your best to be able to just scout the enemies and everything like that. And if you don't have the gun depression in a certain area, then of course you can do that too, to move around, which is also quite nice for the vehicle. So there is like things that you can do. I just feel like after, you know, playing the PT-76, which is the equivalent of this thing, it's just going to struggle quite a lot in general battles. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Millie Draper, Juan the Panda, Nick R. Kupila, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Merciless Reaper, Orange Tail, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Moxie B. Young, Peter Grayling, Jerry Provolt, Bareen, Alan Hacker, Sem Arslan, Uncle Bean, Derek R., and Lafouche for supporting the channel.